Picks and Perspective with Chrys Johnson.
Episode 000. This is Chrys Johnson sitting in the studio with my boy Steve Rock.
Hey.
He's one of my homies from the Seattle days. All right, so...
Oh, yeah, I'm registering.
You're registering. You are registering.
Nice.
You tipped the scales, sir.
Oh, snap.
You tipped the scales.
Well, thanks for having me in here, buddy. I love talking, and it's usually not in front of microphones, as many as we've played with over the years.
True. I'm excited to have you, Steve. This is so it's my buddy Steve Rock here. He's one of my favorite people in the world. So like there's that. Wow. So we can just start there. But back in the day, I lived in Seattle, as did Steve. Mm-hmm. And I got introduced to Steve through the music scene there, and he was a radio DJ for KISW. Yep. What was it, Metal Shop with Kevin Jacober, right?
So Saturday nights playing every kind of metal you can handle.
Dude, all the metal. I remember. We would like Jeremy actually was the one that tipped me off. Like he had been in Seattle a few years longer,
right?
And was like, "Dude, Saturday night, KSIW, we're like bong hits. Let's listen to Steve and Kevin rock." You know?
Oh, yeah, man. And we'd hang out. We'd share words at a Meshuggah show or whatever. Wherever we were going.
I believe. Well, I don't know if you were there, but I know that Kevin was definitely at the very first Only Human show.
The first one. Yeah, I was trying to figure out.
Paradox.
It was
at the Paradox Theater.
It was at the Paradox.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we opened for Odd Man from Chico, which is my buddy Kale's band. He was the drummer in that band. Who and then Willhaven was the headliner.
Oh yeah.
So like on a total high note, we didn't have a bass player, and we just walked into the Paradox one day and was like, "We're a band and we're totally badass. Like it would be super cool. Like if you just put us on a show because we know those guys."
That works.
They're like, yeah, I guess we need an opener, sure. Okay. We're like, yes, we're so good at this booking thing.
And you guys, well, you weren't amazing at booking, but you're good at playing music with each other. And I miss you guys. That was...
Thanks, man.
Yeah, Chrys over here, this guy knows his way around some strings and picks, as you will find.
A little bit.
In the following episodes.
That. Yeah. So, I mean, Steve is here to like kind of hang out and walk me through my first podcast because I don't want to do this by myself, to be honest.
Man. Well, we've had a lot of great musical memories. This is another great one, another great chapter opening up. Some MP3s to send out into the ether, filled with chock full with music. That's our favorite kinds, of course.
Favorite kind.
And how many picks do you own again? Do you have about roughly?
Let me 700, 400, no,
70,000. Because you told me 4 kajillion last time, but I thought
it's a close approximation.
It's in the kajillions.
It's probably more legitimately like only a few bill, but
well, it's an exciting time for picks as far as what you've shown me, and I've seen some stuff in your hands that I just didn't expect, like pick wise, to really ever see, and more innovations and more fun than really a lot of people know about. And I'm thankful for this kind of podcast coming out and you taking your time.
Cool, thanks.
So Players Pick Podcast. Was there any other name you were Chrys Time?
No, Chrys Time was taken. So I just decided on Players Pick Podcast because it had the P's.
I love it. Well, I've loved watching you hand over just miscellaneous picks to rock stars all the time, and you always have just like 2 pockets full to the brim. So there's no one better to do a podcast like this, I don't think.
Oh. Thanks.
And so what was your? And of course, you're going to ask a lot about picks with a lot of your guitar buddies and bass buddies out there. Did you have a favorite, or want to share a pick memory of your very own, please, sir?
Sure,
from the good old days.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it really started with, "Hey, dog, what's up?"
Oh, dog, yeah. Dog's coming into the recording studio.
Dog is in the studio, and that's the woofa. So my relationship to a guitar pick pretty much started when I was about 10. Like I had a neighbor that showed me a couple of riffs, and I just remember he had a Fender celluloid, confetti-looking pick. You know, it's the classic guitar pick. I think that dads pretty much across the nation have.
Dad pick.
It's the dad pick.
Yep.
You know, I don't know what to get. That one's colorful. I'm just going to get 3 of those for $1, you know? And so I learned a 12-bar blues thing when I was around 10, but like I actually didn't really start playing guitar then. It was a strange thing. It wasn't until like years later when I was 15 going on 16, my buddy Ryan Miranda, second guitar, in Only Human.
Mm-hmm.
His dad got him a tele copy, and he learned like the riffs from Green Jello, like the Three Little Pigs riff.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, if you can do that, I think I need to do that, because that looks like something I need to do in my life. Just, so I traded my skateboard for a guitar.
Wow.
Yeah.
The classic move.
Yeah, I was like, okay, skateboarding is dangerous. I've hurt myself a lot. Guitar playing looks a little safer. So I jumped on that bandwagon, got a Strat copy from my old buddy Jonas Smith, who I think at some point shortly after that was pissed that we traded. I think he wanted the guitar back or something. I can't remember. I remember something about that. And then I started taking guitar lessons from a really cool dude named Dan Bryant. Both Ryan and I actually took lessons from him, and he had Clayton picks. So we used Clayton picks for a hot second until like the color-coded Tortex thing was like the display was at the music store, and you're like starts at red, orange, and yellow, green, blue, purple, black, white, or whatever. And I just I think in combination with seeing that in the store and reading Guitar Player magazine and being a fan of metal, I'm pretty sure it was Dimebag Darrell that where I was like, oh, he plays a green Tortex? What else? Who needs anything else? He's the man.
Damn right.
I mean, there's nothing we were such fans of Pantera that it just didn't matter. They could say use a penny, kid, and we would have used it. We would have done anything.
Yeah. No, if Dime asked me to jump off a bridge, I was already there.
Yeah, hopefully there's water down there. I mean, hopefully it's not too
wouldn't
tall.
matter if Dime asked, but
yeah.
But I trusted him definitely.
See, this is something. But see, you and I can talk about Dimebag as though we actually kind of knew him, because we actually kind of did in a certain way. We've both had multiple interactions with the man.
Did get to shake hands. That feels good. Good
yeah.
to know.
Did you ever interview him for?
Yeah, I sat by in my early radio years, and I was in on a couple, but it was cool to even shake the man's hand. He was definitely a number one for me. If you walked into my room in junior high, it was just Pantera all over the walls, like covering Metallica, which I don't know. And this is coming from a guy with the Jackson Kelly and Marty Friedman's everywhere on my walls.
Sure.
He's the shredder of all shredders and all, but Dimebag inched them all out. I don't know how. How did he do that?
Yeah, because he had a little something different, I'm a big fan of Marty. I'm a big fan of a lot of the same guitar players, right?
Of course.
But come on, dude. Dime's had it all. He had the whole thing, and he wasn't. What I think was part of the beauty of it was that he wasn't overly technical.
Yeah,
he had the shred, but he kept that in reserve and was more interested in the song and the groove and how to get you to the point, the apex point.
Right.
He would call it set yourself up to blow up.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. And then watch it go.
Yeah.
Watch it go. Well, that's the beauty. That's what I love about, especially just nostalgicizing like this over Guitar Heroes, and why this podcast's great, and what you guys are going to hear a lot more of on this podcast is just really musicians opening up, those doors to those good times and all the things, those mementos like picks. That really, I remember fighting in the mosh pit for a Dimebag pit at a Pantera show,
damn.
Your favorite guitarist throws a pick into the crowd. Everybody's going for it.
Going for it.
And, I was going to say that's the best thing they could throw out. Sometimes back in the 90s, they'd throw beers out. And,
that's right.
And, not get in trouble. I'd say pick, though, as far as I've seen somebody, take a drumstick to the head. So I'd say picks are a lot safer, and they do a little bit more of a flutter into the crowd.
Yeah. I did actually fight somebody, or not fight, but wrestle somebody for a drumstick of a Meshuggah drumstick, and it ended up being my buddy Ryan Miranda. We were two of 6 people at the Warfield in 97 or something, trying to see Chaos Fear on its first go around.
Oh, yeah.
And Tomas threw a stick, and we were definitely. I'm like, look up. Oh, buddy, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll figure this out later.
And you cut it in half.
No, we didn't. I think I ended up with it at some point. Maybe I don't know, because I'm like, you can have visitation rights.
Oh, there
I
you
don't
go.
know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know how we worked that
That's
out,
good.
or if it was ever really worked out, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, more to come on guitar picks. There's a lot of different influences along the way. Mm-hmm. For me personally, I became a Jazz 3 guy because of my buddy Zane Williams at Loud Technologies when we were working together. I did a lot of like testing with Jazz 3s, and he made me like play one for a whole weekend, and that actually got me off of the Tortex Green, which I had been on for almost 10 years at that point. I just was blindly like buying them, no like questions asked, and then Zane was like, "Try this." I was like, "Oh man, it's so little and weird. I don't know about that," And then and I got converted, and flash forward, I was working at EMG, blah blah blah. I have all these interesting stories. You're going to hear more about that as the podcast kind of comes.
Oh yeah,
as we get into the different interviews. So I won't bore you with that necessarily.
The EMG days.
Yeah, EMG days, just before the Dunlop days. And
oh yeah,
you actually were down here visiting while I was still at EMG.
Yeah,
right?
I remember that. Oh, you did some killer stuff, and as you mentioned, a lot more to come on that. I love just to see just all these revolutions and resolutions and everything between you and I, musically or otherwise, that's transpired. But just the fact that we were stretching, doing some good yoga maybe a couple years ago, and now how many? Do you have any numbers, real quick, to wow the crowd with? Like you've been teaching yoga for how long now?
2 years
now.
Yeah,
two straight years.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy doesn't take a day off from much of the good stuff, that including yoga.
True.
But man, that really have you accredited probably most of your being able to be so alert, alive, thriving, doing all these things, driving me to these shows that you're getting me into, and still having enough energy to pop up the next day and do it all again. Like, how important is yoga to you for that?
It's the most important, actually, and it's interesting because I mean, we kind of reconnected. We stayed in touch through the digital realm for years after I left Seattle, but it wasn't till you were like down here visiting your mom.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Whoa, you're in Santa." He's like, "Yeah, I'm kind of from Santa Rosa." I'm like, "What? Dude, that's so cool. How lucky did I get?"
Yeah.
And then I remember taking you to some yoga classes before I ever got into the teacher training. And you caught me right as my apex where I was like, "Nope, I'm going to do yoga every day."
Yeah.
It's really important to me right now. And cause I've been commuting a lot, like both for EMG and now for Dunlop for the last 5 years. And I think I've been teaching for 2, and I want to say I'm 200 plus classes that I've taught so far.
That's awesome.
At this point, because I average 3 a week, but there have been like so many weeks where I've covered early morning classes and like made it 5 to 7 classes in a week that I'm teaching on top of trying to go to a class or do my own practice at home.
I like that. And I just thought of this, how the odd parallels to being in a band versus teaching yoga, and how like I was about to bring up like, oh, you've done festivals and da-da-da. Like it's funny to think like a musician, but also like, it's a whole different mindset. But I think being a musician definitely would help someone.
It's totally helped me. Matter of fact, it's interesting because in Only Human back in those days, Jeremy and I kind of took the lead on the booking and managing the band's finances and the band and all these, the van, all these different things. And there were so many moving parts, and you had to get it was pretty much democratic, and you had to get sign off from everybody. Like, okay, so we're gonna start practice on Thursdays now. Man, I got to do this. And for me, being a yoga teacher, and you turn into like a one person show. You're
that's the DJ.
Yeah, you're a DJ. Yeah, that's exactly. It's the DJ model,
and you literally are, and you do incredible sets and playlists for your literally though. That sounds crazy to someone 20 years ago, where yoga is pretty silent,
right?
But to be rocking to the yoga, you definitely got me. I'm a happy customer.
I'm happy to say that that's actually one of my favorite parts of teaching is making fun playlists for the hot yoga classes. And the concept of making flyers, making handbills, and standing out in front of other people's shows back in Seattle and be like, here, man, next Thursday, 2 weeks from now, come on down, so and so. It's like all local bands, and you're just trying like hell to get anybody to show up at your Monday Night Metal Madness,
right?
Because you go on at midnight on a Monday. That was like that set the pace for me. If I can do that, if I can get 15 to 20 people on a Monday night, stay till midnight, I can get people to come to yoga at an early morning thing, and
That's what
feel
a
better.
breakthrough. Wow. Yeah. All the humbling. Hear that, kids? You know what? We had staplers and paper, and we had to go around to telephone poles to get our message out.
Back before any of us owned any type of Photoshop, we were like cutting things out and then doing the whole thing by
we were
hand.
taking photos to shops.
And then you photocopy the collage that you made out of other people's words and whatnot.
They'll never know that Photoshop that you went to a shop with your photo. Now you just Photoshop.
Now I just Photoshop.
But that's so cool to see that kind of combination, and just a big shout out to yoga as well, just as far as it helping people like you and I, and not just like physically, but with that kind of practice and thinking about music and incorporating it into like kind of a healthy lifestyle. I don't know who are these guys? Years ago we were staying up way too late and
drinking all the beers.
Definitely not doing podcasts about picks.
Definitely not.
Glad to see where we're at now.
I'm excited.
So in the future, I know that you have just this crazy roster of people, of friends you've made and folks that you still want to talk to, and all kinds of folks that definitely use those things we call picks.
Yep.
So any sneak preview thoughts for people that are like, okay, here's the first Players Pick podcast? Like, what are they in for that we haven't covered here?
Well, the other part of what we talk about like where they got their relationship with the picks and who kind of started them on that thing, and the philosophy in their life, if there's any predominant thing that kind of keeps them glued together. For me, like I said, it's yoga, and I'm glad you brought it up. It's the front seat. It's in the front seat for my life these days, and it's a substrate for what's happening in all aspects of my life now. And then the other big thing is we all love music so much because we're all mostly musicians, love music. That's part of why they're in the game. And I'm a big fan of getting music suggestions from my good friends and musicians, because I'm always kind of like on the search for that like vein of gold. Like I'm always happy to find a track or a full album, but then somebody goes, "Oh, do you know about such and such?" And I'm like, "Oh, no." And they're like, "They've got 5 albums you've never heard of, and they're all sick." And I'm like, "No." So it's like, for me, it's like when somebody drops, like when they, tell you check out this whole season on Netflix or something like that, and you just like you get to binge on it in a way,
right?
Where you just. It's a brand new band to you, but they've been out for a decade. And all of a sudden you're like, man, how did I pass by this thing? And so I'm always asking, what's your deep cuts? What's the thing that, I might not know about?
Right.
And
that immediately instills more like faith in the past, because at one point I remember as a kid, I'm like, am I going to find all the music I like? And then you just think about how much you miss. There's no way you're going to hear half of it. And what I love about you doing this podcast is that you really do love curating, and you really have. I've watched you make so many of these playlists just for your yoga classes, let alone just playlists in general.
Sure.
So to know that, and to know how much more music is out there, let alone how many more people holding picks need to talk on this podcast and share some gems, like you were mentioning.
It's going to be exciting.
So you got one gem? We're talking about gems.
Yeah. I've got a couple actually. One of them is my favorite dude that I just kind of found on YouTube. This guy Drew of the Drew.
Oh yeah,
bassist producer. He actually helped write and produce the intro music. He's been kind of such a helpful guy in my world. But I love that he's a cross genre dude that primarily is in the realm of EDM, hip hop, and neo soul, but like has an element of punk rock. And he has he enlists a neo soul singer oftentimes kind of like on his track. So the fact that he mixes it all up, it's genre defying, and I'm interested in breaking ground.
Absolutely. Right? And how do you spell that?
Drew of the Drew. So it's just Drew and Drew, but in the middle it's of the
DREW.
Yeah, DREW.
Drew of the Drew.
Correct. Yes. Thanks for helping me spell, bro.
Hey. Well, the listeners can't see it.
No, they can't. They can't. But of the is one word. It's like it's together, pushed together. Yeah, find him on YouTube. That's where the coolest cuts are.
Incredibly talented.
Yeah. Another one would be my friend's Little Tybee out in Georgia.
Oh yeah,
Atlanta. Shout out to Little Tybee. These guys are so damn talented. It drives me nuts. They're what I would kind of call a progressive future folk band of some kind. They've got, I think it's a 6-piece, but drums, bass. The the vocalist plays acoustic guitar. His wife plays violin and viola. And then Josh Martin, the main guitar player, he's an 8-string electric guitarist, which you just don't find in like a folk. I said a folk band, right? Like a folk, like singing song. That's not something you would hear or even imagine. But he rarely uses very any gain, or drive on the guitar, and has just a plethora of cool tapping techniques that are tapping out chords that are in direct response and support for these cool vocally driven songs.
Right.
So outside of the creativity in the music, they're also very creative. Brock Scott, the singer and guitar player, he's like a master of film and video and audio and stuff. So he helps really shape the way the band looks. Love that too. You got to check him out. Little Tybee.
Little Tybee.
Tybbee.
Tybee.
One more. I got one more for you.
Ooh.
One of my absolute favorite bands in the planet is Intronaut.
Oh man, yeah,
dude.
Same.
You know.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know, right? It's like we're fans.
Yes. Intronaut. Like astronaut, but inward. Intro.
Yeah. The last record they put out, The Direction of Last Things. So incredible. Like I like the whole catalog, but that one was mixed by Devin Townsend, somebody I'm a big fan of myself.
Devi,
heavy.
Any tidbits about Devin on this first, real quick? Sprinkling. I know you have a rich history with. I mean, I've loved Strapping Young Lads since. Dude, it goes back to late '90s.
So good. Heavy is a real heavy thing.
Yeah.
You know?
So heavy.
So heavy.
So heavy.
Yeah, I love Heavy Devi. He's became a good friend along the way. I got the chance to actually go perform with him a bit in 2011. Played some acoustic guitar on his live DVD for Ghost, which was super fun. It's like the last real gig I've had. 2011. It's been too long, folks.
Oh man,
just saying.
Well, gig. I mean, you have gigs.
I have gigs,
that kind of gig.
But that kind of gig's a little different, you know.
Oh, and for those of you not in the know, which is probably no one, Devin Townsend, Strapping Young Lad, killer band on all counts, metal wise. The Devin Townsend Project.
Yes,
worth spending some time looking into. He's produced bands like Lamb of God. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, his name precedes him. People know.
And he's about to drop maybe his absolute career-defining record. It's called Empath. I'm not going to tell you anything else about it, but I do know that it is maybe the best thing of all time, which is really tough to say with him and his career having 20-plus years, 20-plus albums.
Yeah.
And I like most of them. I mean, there's a few that are like, I wouldn't, they're not my favorite, but he's made some interesting records along the way that like I still like something out of it. But this record is kind of going to blow the doors off in all the realms. But quickly back to Intronaut, I will just finish up and say Intronaut's rad. They have they're a great band, great homies. They're an interesting sludgy doom prog mathy experimental thing that put well. Yeah, and they let the bass player, my buddy Joe Lester, they let that guy, like, he's a fretless 5-string lefty, so he's already a weirdo. but he studied so much music, and he's such a real learned guy. That they let that gem of a human do some really interesting bass breaks that are like kind of jazzy, and they I don't know. You have to listen to Intronaut. Just listen to it. Don't take my word for it. It's amazing.
We'll find some links, probably pop them under the...
Yeah, it'll be a curated playlist for every episode, actually, Steve. Did you know that?
No, you didn't tell me that.
I guess I didn't tell you that.
Oh.
But that's what we're doing.
A playlist for every episode.
Playlist for every episode.
Yes.
So the way that works, just for the listeners, what you can expect is we're going to be doing... Obviously, the main artist that is being interviewed, we put their latest record or their last record or whatever one's on Spotify, because that's my jam.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a Spotify guy. So I'm going to put their album into a mix, and then we're going to, every thing that we mention in the podcast of other artists, that will get mixed into the curated playlist. So, like, the fact that we've talked about these other artists, those will all go in this playlist, right?
Very
along
cool.
with some Only Human, along with some Devin Townsend.
And that's the future, my friends. We're living in it.
We're living in it.
Picks. And then by podcast maybe 50, people can just like print their own picks right out of the computer.
Yes.
I don't know when that's coming, actually.
Yes,
No, I don't know.
podcast 50 will come with, you will actually receive a 3D download. You're going to have to hook up to your phone and, to get the pick of the week.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like that's what you're going to have to do. And it's going to
Yep.
come out. And it's going to be really amazing.
But then hopefully at podcast 100, I heard that they can 3D print Steve Vai, literally.
Yeah.
And
so you don't have to actually ever play guitar again.
You can just have him.
You'll have
there,
your own
and
personal Steve Vai.
That's real nice. So we got
Yeah.
100 episodes. Looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to that.
3D printed Steve Vai.
3D printed Steve Vai. Here we come.
Yeah, till then, getting picky with it.
Oh, yeah.
So picky.
So picky. The pickiest.
And thank you for picking me to be here, Chris. It's an
my
honor.
pleasure. It's a real pleasure to have you, Steve. Players Pick Podcast, Episode 0 with my boy Steve Rock.
Yeah.
We out.
Pacifist. Patchouli. Players Pick Podcast. Picks and perspective with Chrys Johnson. Pool table. Painkiller. Palindrome.